and welcome to a video where I am talking about both my August to be read plans and my July wrap up, because I have just had a beautiful newborn and he's 2 weeks old at the moment. So I don't know when I'm going to be able to edit this video. It's honestly a miracle that I'm sitting here filming it right now because he's asleep. So now I'm going to briefly talk about the books that I want to read during August, if that's possible. Audiobooks have been really helpful at the moment, but I've got a few physical books coming in the mail that I'm really keen for. So first of that is The Nightshade God, and that is the third book to I want to say a romantasy series, but romantasy is such a buzzword that I really want to avoid it too. And this follows Laure, and she has necromancy magic. In the first book, there is a whole conspiracy with politics, and she gets placed next to the prince, and she's got to uncover the goings on of the court. And obviously from there, it escalates quite significantly. We've got a lot more understanding of the magic system now, and I really like the three lead characters in this story, and I'm hoping that it's leading towards a romance between all three of them. It seems like that's very much on the peripheral though, and that's perfectly fine with me. I love a slow burn, I love the tension, and I love the intent of all of these characters, and I'm really looking forward to the conclusion in this series because it's been one that I've discovered this year and really enjoyed. And then next, I'm also looking forward to This Fatal Kiss, or The Fatal Kiss, and this was described as being similar to Studio Ghibli, and you can tell by my jumper, I love Studio Ghibli, and I thought, okay, I'll give this a try. So it's probably going to have a whimsical aspect to it, as well as an understanding of life as we know it, so it might be a little bit existential in places as well. And I think it follows some kind of water spirit who is a demon wanting to become human again, and this reluctant hero who I think messes up a spell, and then both of them team up and go on a quest or something. But beyond that, I don't really know much about it. I also think it's young adult, which usually isn't my thing, but I'm trying this one anyway because sometimes young adult has an outlier and I really love it. So I'm hoping that that's what this one is for me as well. And then, what else do I have? That's right, I've also got Arcana Academy, and this one, again, I don't want to say romantasy because it's so tried and tested at the moment. And I know that this one is about a woman who is doing like illegal magic by making tarot cards or something. And then when she's caught or taken prisoner, the headmaster of this school takes her on and goes, I have a mission or a quest for you, and you are going to be my bride-to-be. You can join the first years of students, and you've got to unroot this conspiracy that's happening at the same time. So I think it's potentially going to be hopefully a slow burn romance, also an intrigue-centric plot with the magic and the politics, and I've got that on audiobook. So even though it's like a 20-hour audiobook, I'm hoping that I can get through that in August, because sometimes when I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning, my brain doesn't want to focus on anything except going back to bed after feeding the newborn. So maybe during the day I can get some audiobook listening done, depending on my attention span. That's the goal, really. And then lastly, for my August TBR, before I jump into my July wrap-up where I read and finished 6 books, I wanted to talk about very briefly Lightfall, and this is an ebook that I've got, and I'm hoping that at some point I can read on my Kindle, but we will see. And this one, I think, has vampires and those old school supernatural creatures, but it's set in maybe a city and there's a murder mystery, or I'm combining it in my memory with something else that sounds quite similar. But either way, I wanted to read Lightfall in like January and I haven't gotten around to it yet. And so I finally got the ebook, and that is my plan. Whether I get to it in August or not, I'm trying to, but we'll see what happens. So now I can finally talk about the books that I finished in July. And if you've been on my channel for a while, you'll be so proud of me because I continued reading the Dresden Files, okay? And I finished book 4, which is Summer Night. And I have been sleeping on this series for such a long time because I got like 12 books into it and then just paused. And now I don't remember all the intricacies of it. So I need to reread this and the rest of the series in order to catch up, because I think in January 2026, there is a new book in this series coming out. So now is the perfect time in 2025 to do a massive reread in order to catch up for the next book coming out. Now, this book emotionally centers grief, loss, and anger after some things that happened in the previous book. And so Dresden is very much at rock bottom, and his friends recognize that about him and they're trying to pull him back out. The poor man just honestly needs money, sleep, and time to heal, like mentally and physically. But with a Dresden book, it's so fast paced with multiple things happening at once that, you know, he's probably not going to get those things. So this one is about Dresden when he walks into his office at the start of the book, and he gets manipulated into agreeing to a deal with Queen Mab of the Fae Courts, and she's the Winter Queen, and she wants him to investigate something in particular. Little does he know that he's been manipulated into this because it has ties to the White Council of Wizards, which Dresden is on, and a lot of the old school White Council don't like him. So now he's caught between these two major power plays, and he's got to figure out this investigation as well, all while recovering from his grief and loss in the previous book. So no pressure, buddy. I really liked seeing Billy, Murphy, and Bob in this book, specifically Murphy, and how Dresden has finally decided to pull the veil from her eyes. Like, instead of going, I need to keep information from her to protect her, something that's happened in the previous books have meant that she's seen a lot more than Dresden thought she ever would. So now he's like, well, sharing with her is going to scare her, but it's also going to inform her. So that's what I really liked about this book as well. Also, when there's fight scenes in here, there was a moment when Dresden was keeping track of the amount of bullets that Murphy was shooting, and I just thought that was a great attention to detail. And I think the first time I read this, I gave it a 5 stars. Most of the Dresden books I've given 5 stars, in all honesty, especially because the first time through there is such an element of surprise because I don't know anything about the plot or what to expect. But this time through I gave it a 4, which is still a really high rating. So I had a great time with this book. It was incredibly fast paced. I was listening to this while I was 39 weeks pregnant and just wanting to go to the hospital and have my baby. So the fact that this was a good distraction says a lot about it. So I had a great time, and I also continued a few other Dresden books. So you'll see those pop up during this wrap up. So naturally, the next book that I finished was the next Dresden book, Death Masks. And in this one, a magically imbued relic of religion has been stolen. It's a magical shroud. And additionally, a thief has been brutally murdered, and Dresden is brought in on the case to figure out what's going on. So at the beginning of this book, he's also in a TV studio. He's going to be on a talk show, and magic doesn't really jive well with technology. So when he gets stressed out, he tends to just blow things up and short circuit devices just from proximity alone, let alone his stress. So the fact that he was on a TV set, not a good sign. And a vampire, like a red court vampire, multiple courts of vampires in this series, different kinds as well, different traits, but the red court are quite formidable, and there is currently a war going on with the red court and all of the magic users on the White Council, so it's quite intense. And the head of the red court is also on the TV show being interviewed, and he challenges Dresden to a direct duel. He's like, if we go head to head and I win, then that's it for the war. Like, that's the red court has won and the White Council has lost. And so it's pretty high stakes, and Dresden really can't refuse, because how can you say no to such a powerful entity? So that is somehow linked to all of the things in his investigation peripherally. There is also a character in here that gets introduced named Waldo Butters. He analyzes all the bodies in the morgue, and a few books back, after a particular big incident, he recognized that something was supernatural about the bodies, when the supernatural is not really something that normal people recognize. And so Murphy trusts Butters and brings Dresden to him and says, look, this is the thief's body that was brutally murdered. Can you share your findings? So now there's been a few characters connected, and I know that Butters comes back a couple of books down the track, and there are some great moments with him too. So I'm so happy that he's now been introduced and we've had like a bit of a preamble to who he is. As you could probably tell, this centers magic, demons, and murder, and a demon also targets Dresden and he tries to use his magic against it, and his magic just bounces off. So he has to have help from the Knights of the Cross. So Michael comes into this story as well, and he is one of the really steadfast side characters in this series that I really love. He's got such a moral sense of justice, and I adore him. And so I liked seeing his interactions with Dresden, and Dresden understanding and challenging magic and religion as well in this book. And I just liked the investigation in general because I could never guess where it was going next. I have read it before, obviously, but it's just nice to know that even though I had a huge break in between reading these, it was still fairly unpredictable, which is great. And again, this one was another 4-star rating. And then after that, I ended up reading a book that I have been meaning to read for so long, and that is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. So to talk about this one, it's quite complicated because there are a bunch of different point of view characters and all of them have their own intent and slow burn story. But on the back, there is a bit of a description about some of the magic system. So I'll read a little bit from the back and then I'll refer to my notes and tell you how I felt about it. So it says, wizardwood, the most precious commodity in the world, comes only from the Rainwilds, but only a live ship can negotiate the perilous waters of the Rainwild River, and live ships are hard to come by. So live ships belong to the trader families, and the Vestrit family who we hear from, they have a live ship, but what happens is 3 generations of their family have to pass away on board and imbue the live ship with their blood and life essence in order for the live ship to be cured, I guess. And so when the curing process happens, the figurehead of the boat comes alive, and so that makes it a bit more easy to communicate with, and they're the fastest ships on the ocean. They've got resistance to the rain-wild rivers because they become acidic, and so they've just got a bit more steadfast ability to sail than a normal boat would. So obviously the live ships are quite a commodity. They're very envied, and for one of the characters marrying into the Vestrit family, he gains a significant amount of power over the live ship. So at the beginning of the book, we follow Althea, who is a young ship hand, and she's trained on the Vestrit family ship. She's a Vestrit, and her father Ephron is dying. I think it's cancer, but you're not exactly sure. And he's waiting at port for the Vivacia, which is their ship, to come back so that he can die on board her and therefore quicken her. And so while he's waiting for her, Althea is coming back. The ship is run by Kyle, who has married into the family. And Kefria is Althea's sister, who is married to Kyle. So there is a whole intent of Ephron's will after he passes that his kids benefit, and he wanted Althea to inherit the ship, but Kyle gets it through Kefria instead. But Althea is like, my entire future has just destroyed itself in front of me. My father's gone, my world is gone, Vivacia is gone, all of it's dead to me, and she's very much cut loose and doesn't know what to do with her life anymore. This very much captures those financial struggles of the pinnacle, like the head of a house passing, and then the scramble afterwards of the toxic person, namely Kyle, trying to take control and power of the leftover assets at the cost of the family around him. And Ronica, Kefria, and Althea's mother, she didn't trust Ephron enough in terms of his judgment on his deathbed and leaving the ship to Althea, but she really starts to see the error of her ways in pushing for it to go to Kefria instead. And then Kefria was vulnerable and trusted too much in Kyle, who is abusive. There's a really interesting quote from Kefria when she's talking about her son Wintro, who is also being forced into being on the ship. He was following the course of becoming a priest, and he's called back to the family. So he's also on very much the outer, and he doesn't like his father. And Kefria really wants to see him before they go out on a voyage. And she says, but she recognized that tone of Kyle's voice when he spoke of Wintro. There was no arguing with it. Best for the sake of peace to set her hopes aside. Imagine doing that for the decade that she has been with him. It's like she's got no spine and no backbone. But when Kyle goes, it's Kefria and Ronica who manage all the family holdings in the house. So they've got their own agency and purpose in managing these assets. And Kyle looks down upon that because he's from Chalced and they are a very bigoted people. They don't like their women doing anything. Case in point, there's a quote here from Kyle that I wrote down because he disgusts me. And it said, his whole tone dismissed Kefria's conjectures as female silliness. And I wanted to throw this. I was quite pregnant at the time, so I didn't throw it because if it was on the floor, I wouldn't be able to pick it back up again. But you get my point? I hate Kyle. It's also pretty safe to say that I adored the character journeys in here. Yes, it's a long book and it took me obviously a while to read, but it was so worth it. I don't feel like it was too slow or too fast, although there were some interlude chapters following some sea serpents that link to the magic system, and for me that felt kind of slow. I could see the purpose and the intent of them, especially because I've read all of the chronicles of Robin Hobb's stories, so I understood their significance, but I was just not super interested in them. But that's really the only criticism I've got. And realistically, I gave this a 4 stars because I really loved my reread. I don't know why it didn't quite feel like a 5 stars, but I'm hoping the rest of the books in this series, eventually when I get to them, who knows when, they'll be 5 stars, because this is very much set the stage and all the characters, and I'm really excited to see how it continues, because obviously I've forgotten a lot. Also, I didn't mention Kenneth, who is a pirate king, and he's just, he's so awful as well, but he just hides it through charm and charisma, and so he fools people around him, and it's so clever, but it's so, you can just see it happening. It's so good. Robin Hobb's writing and characterization. Then I finally read a book that I have been putting off for ages, and that is Silverborn by Jessica Townsend. And I did a recap of the first 3 books, and I think I said in the past that rereading all 3 of those books to prepare for that recap, it burned me out, and realistically it did. I also started and finished Silverborn and gave it 3 stars, and I think my interest in this series has fizzled out ultimately. I will say good on Jessica Townsend for making the whodunit aspect of this book compelling, because that can really be something that's difficult to do, especially like the lead up is really interesting with the tension, and then the reveal is sometimes where I get lost because it's not as impactful as I hoped it would be, but this really kept consistency all the way through. So I do admire that quite a bit, but I was just not really interested in picking this up once I'd put it down. And so the fact that I was not enamored by it as we were going through the story, and it was a whodunit with like a mystery that you're trying to solve, it just told me that I was not loving it as much as I hoped I would be. And this one follows Morrigan when she is invited to Nevermore's wealthy silver district, and she discovers a world of extravagance and a family mystery that she's eager to unravel. So, that's the whodunit aspect. She could never imagine where it will lead. A white wedding, a golden dragon, and a red pool of blood. Embroiled in suspicion and danger, Morrigan leaps headfirst into a murder investigation while also grappling with her ever-growing Wondersmith powers. And I didn't quite like the Wondersmith power aspect, because her mind almost has like a blank in it that she requested to be put there so she didn't have to lie to her friends. But in putting that blank there, she's lying by omission. So that was just a little bit frustrating in terms of her avoiding having difficult conversations. I understand why she did it, because she's a kid and she doesn't want to have these conversations, but it was still just generally annoying to read about as a reader. And then lo and behold, I read the next book in the Dresden Files, and that is Blood Rights. I think it's book 6. And this one, I want to start off with a quote, and it says, "You always a wise ass? No, sometimes I'm asleep." So that really just sums up Dresden in a nutshell. Again, like the others that I've talked about so far, this doesn't have the element of surprise to me anymore, and I initially also gave it a 5 stars, but this time through I gave it a 4, which is again still quite solid. In this one, there is an entropy curse that is killing people on a film set, and Dresden is hired on as a staff member who is investigating this on the down low, and he's hired on as a favor to Thomas, who is a white court vampire. So I mentioned a red court vampires earlier. There is also the white court, and the white court predominantly feed on emotions, namely desire, and this film set is an adult movie set, if you get my drift. I don't want to be demonetized, so I'm trying not to say it out loud, but I feel like you can pick up what I'm putting down. Therefore, I felt that the setting was like a little bit cheap, and some of the conversations were a bit like, yeah, you're fully leaning into this theme. I see it. Okay, let's move on. So that was a little bit like, why are we here? Why are we doing this? But again, with the plot and the White Court, it was pulled off beautifully, and I can see why this was the particular set, because it had intricacies that linked to the White Court, and they feed off emotions and desire. So it made sense. 2 things I loved about this were Murphy, again, who had such physical and mental hurdles to overcome in this book, and I loved seeing that development from her. And additionally, I also loved seeing Dresden's fire magic and the adjacent consequences of him using it. So cool. There was also like, not a betrayal, but like a reveal about one of the characters that Dresden thought he knew in here, and it's revealed that it's not actually the entirety of who he thought this person was. So I really liked that understanding click with Dresden, and he had to kind of refocus his whole past, and that was intriguing to see him have that shift. So I really, again, quite enjoyed this. I enjoyed Thomas. I enjoyed his interaction with Dresden. I enjoyed the deeper ties to friends and family that this book really had at its core. And again, I just had such a fun time. I love listening to the audiobooks of these. I've only got 2 more to talk about now. So the next book is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and this one follows Sarah. She loses her aunt Jasmine at the beginning and then goes and enacts a resurrection spell and brings Jasmine back. But because she did that, it very much impacts her magic, and so it really depletes pretty much all of it. Because of that, she's now looking for a restoration spell for her magic and not really having much luck. And so she's just stuck running this magical inn for the next 15 years with, you know, Jasmine and whoever found family they take along the way. And because of a spell that Sarah made on the inn before she lost all her magic, the inn really attracts people who really need it. And if you are just trying to find it, then you can't. So I really loved that aspect of this is a safe place and this is the found family. And I did enjoy the plot, but I enjoyed it more in the second half than the first. I think the first half would be like a 3 stars. The second half would be closer to a 4, but not quite. So I'm giving it a 3.5 as a rating. I liked the writing style and I liked the characters, but I wasn't personally particularly emotionally invested. I was interested in where everything was going, but I was just not super emotional about the characters. And I did like that there was a romance in here as well, but it was not the major focus, but it was a part of the story. And I always like it when there's a bit of flavoring as a romance rather than it being the driving force of a story. So this was very cozy, it was very endearing, and I just had a good time with it. And honestly, I would recommend it. I think it was great, but it's not one that is going to be particularly memorable. It was just a cozy moment, and now I can move on. Similarly, talking about cozy fantasy, I'm going to end this video on The Enchanted Greenhouse, and I gave The Spell Shop by this author a 5 stars, and I absolutely adored it. I am 100 pages into this, and I am not adoring it as much as book 1. I am probably giving this around a 3 stars, and I'm talking about it now in a almost conclusion way because I've very much made up my mind and I just keep moving this closer to me and around me while I'm feeding my baby and just not wanting to pick it up. So that makes me think that I'm just not super invested in it. I think the formula of book 1 really worked, where there was a ex-librarian and she took her sentient houseplant and fled the city because there was rebellion and fire in the city, and so she took as many library books as she could, went to this small island and then restarted her life there. And there was a bit of a helpful, friendly, but kind of aloof and gruff guy who helped her out as well, and they were both socially awkward and it was gorgeous to see. And so I liked the formula there, but the formula in here is kind of similar and it's not working for me as well. So Turlu is our protagonist. She actually did the spell that created the sentient houseplant in book 1, and so that's the link, but this is very much a separate story because she got exiled and turned into a statue for that particular crime because it's illegal magic. So now she's on this island and it's full of greenhouses, and there's this guy who tends to the greenhouses who is a bit kind of standoffish. It's like his special interest is talking about plants and that's it. Anything else he's not interested. And so for that reason, he comes off as a bit gruff or blunt, but really he's got a lot of heart and a lot of care. And then there's also another sentient plant in here that's left over from another sorcerer, and this is a rose and her name is Lottie. So it's got that like gruff, standoffish, blunt guy who's the love interest. It's got our main character who is, you know, on an island away from everything she knows, and it's also got that other sentient plant that is a side character who kind of adds a bit of tension to both of those two characters interacting. She's very sassy, and I thought, it's good, but I'm not loving it. And so I don't know when I'm going to finish reading this. I've got 200 pages left, which is honestly really not that much. But when you're feeding a newborn and trying to keep a baby alive and yourself alive at the same time, it feels like I'm not going to read this for years. But I'm going to try. So I will add this to my August TBR because I'm filming this video on the 1st of August. When will I edit this? I have no idea, but that is really what my goal is. So at some point I'll finish this, even though it's not something that I'm super loving. It's something that I'm kind of mildly enjoying. So the cozy vibes are definitely there, and it's taken over 100 pages to kind of set everything up. So I'm hoping from this point on that it really takes off in terms of the plot. We'll see, because cozy fantasy, I find plot really struggles sometimes. The Spell Shop was great, that was quite consistent. This one is not as strong, so we'll see what happens. But that is my August TBR and my July wrap up. Let me know what you have been reading or what you plan to read during the month of August, or what you finished in July. I would love to know. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video, whenever that will be. Bye.